What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the latest episode in the Season 4 finale of Dark Side of the Ring, Season 4, Episode 10, The World According to Marty Jannetty. Great episode here. It's been an up-and-down season. I've enjoyed Season 4 on the whole of Dark Side of the Ring. Honestly, the Bash of the Beach episode, for as dumb as it was, and all the conflicting reports from Bischoff and Russo and everyone else involved in that episode, it ended up being one of the best episodes all season, probably because it was so different than everything else we've gotten this season, which has been great, and that they've kind of found a formula that works for them, I guess, in their opinion, I would assume, as far as we focus on this person, we talk about the heights of their career, what they accomplished, falling into drugs and alcohol, and then they die. And now there's been a couple of people they've been focusing on and featuring that are still alive, like Abdul the Butcher in this episode as well. Marty Jannetty is no different than some of those other subjects in terms of being his own worst enemy. Magnum TA was another one. That wasn't really dark. He obviously is still alive, doing better, health-wise, improving and whatnot. Marty is a very sad story. It's a cautionary tale in many ways as far as the shit that he's gotten himself into, being his own worst enemy and whatnot. And not only that, I just feel like the stories that were told on this episode, as far as like the shit that he's experienced, the shit that he's done, whether you believe it or not, the stuff that he's been through, is just completely crazy. Like, it's a lot of crazy shit. So honestly, I thought this was a wise decision as far as closing the season out with this, because it was so, like, just crazy is the only word I can really think of when I think of this episode. Some shit I honestly did not know when it comes to the life and career of Marty Jannetty. I knew that he's been hired and fired by WWE more times than probably anyone. According to Al Snow, who was close with Jannetty, former tag team partner, he thinks that the Iron Sheik he said, was the only other person to be fired and hired more times than Marty Jannetty by WWE. But anyway, let's get right into it here. Al Snow, who I mentioned, talks about Jannetty initially injuring his ankle back during their new Rockers run in the 90s. So that was what they started out as, not just with his upbringing and stuff, which we'll get into momentarily. But we first see Jannetty because he's obviously still alive, and he looks great. Honestly, I don't know if he'd get back in the ring, and he's too old for that now. But facially, he doesn't look really all that bad considering all the drugs, I assume. I don't know that he still does, but he did for such a long time and whatever, all the shit that he put his body through. He really does not look that bad. But you kind of zoom down, you see that he's in a wheelchair due to the two ankle injuries and issues that he has. It looks fucking brutal. And they mention, we hear from his doctors, and one of them has known Marty for a very long time, since they were younger. One of them mentions that a normal person may have one or two different ankle issues. He's had 6 or 7. Maybe not just ankle issues, but other health issues that he's currently dealing with. And when the producer asks the doctor, what do you think his pain, not tolerance, but on a pain scale from 1 to 10, what do you think he's experiencing right now with these ankle injuries? And the doctor says 12 out of 10 on a good day. So on one of them, he had a joint replacement. On the other one, he had reconstructive ankle surgery. So just terrible injuries to have. He's obviously in a lot of pain. It looks gruesome. It looks brutal. And it dates back to that injury when he rolled his ankle back in the 90s. As Snow said, they showed the footage from their new Rockers run in the late 90s. Or the mid-90s, whatever. He tells a random story about mixing chemicals when he was in high school. And he, not caused the room to explode, but they have this just comical reenactment of the incident where a girl, one of his classmates, is blown backwards into the back of the classroom. And that was from mixing the chemicals together. So it just looked completely crazy, but again, he tells that story just to kind of show the theme of him being not troubled youth, but just a goof off even at that point in his life. He never really listened to direction, and he was kind of a class clown even back then. We hear from his friend Karen, who's all over the episode, and she says that he lies a lot, and he tells a lot of small snippet stories here at this point of the episode where he remembers meeting Trump, and Trump knew who he was. Donald Trump, that is, obviously. Trump knew who he was. He said that he went to a sex addiction class at one point in his life, and he ended up dating a counselor, some pretty crazy stuff. He mentions that he had a tough upbringing. He had an abusive father, a mother that wasn't really there, and he ended up training under Jerry Oates, a gentleman named Jerry Oates, debuting in the ring and having his first match in 1983 in Mid-South. Brutus Beefcake, who we hear a lot from on this episode, and his wife, Missy, I believe her name was. I don't know why she was featured. Beefcake was one person, not really sure why not Marty Jannetty, why Missy was on this episode. But Beefcake talks about how talented Marty Jannetty was. And he ended up teaming with Shawn soon after that. They partied after getting hired by WWE. Their first night there, they got, really drunk and they went out and partied. They not only got kicked out of the bar because they partied too hard and got into trouble, they ended up getting fired from WWE within a week for just being too wild. So they got fired, and that's when he introduces us to the term of GAT. He says that he's God's amusement toy, in the sense that God, I guess, in his own mind, plays games with Marty just because, it has nothing to do with his own actions, he says. He doesn't really make mention of that. Snow says that he can't, hold himself accountable. He's not responsible. So he just blames God and other people for everything that's happened in his life. And his friend even says, one of the friends interviewed on this episode, it's not that he's never had bad luck before, because a lot of people do, him being no exception, but he just doesn't take accountability for his own actions. And instead he blames God and other people. So anyway, back then, after they got fired from WWE, they ended up signing with a promotion called Continental Wrestling, barely getting by, before catching the attention of Vince McMahon again. They got a second chance in WWE, and ended up obviously getting really over, being successful. One of his friends, Tanaka, the name sounds slightly familiar. I'm not really familiar with who he is. He told a story about Marty taking a gun and shooting it all over the room in an attempt to wake up Tanaka. So he ended up shooting his car, and there were bullet holes all around the room. Just, again, a crazy random story. And there were many of those, obviously, as I mentioned earlier here on this episode. He and Shawn were so popular, they were like the hot guys on the roster back at that point. They were taking turns with women, we were told, on this episode. And they recall the incident, which either I had forgotten about or just didn't remember, where they broke a gentleman's neck by the name of Chuck Austin, who was a jobber at that point. He was an enhancement talent, and he got hit with the rocker dropper from Marty Jannetty, and he ended up breaking his neck. So the guy had very little experience, apparently 6 months worth of experience. I don't know if they mentioned that here. I had read that elsewhere. But he took the move wrong. He dove head first into the mat when he took the move. And Chuck, we hear brief comments from him, not in real time from back then, but he said that, Marty said that, he told me I'd be fine and I'd be okay, and obviously he wasn't. He broke his neck. He had to be flown out in a helicopter. So he found out, Marty said, within 6 months they were getting sued. And the company and Marty himself. And maybe Shawn too, I don't know. The jury came to the conclusion that Chuck Austin was 5% negligent, Marty Jannetty was 5% negligent, and WWE was 90% negligent. So they ended up winning $24 million, and Marty was thinking, that's way more than what they sued us for, which was $10 million. And they ended up settling for $10 million, but because he was 5% responsible, he had to pay that. He had to pay 5% of that $10 million, and he was told that it would end up coming out of his royalty check anyway. So he didn't make as much money as he could have for a while there, because they were taking money out of his checks to account for the money they were being sued for by Chuck Austin. We hear that he took a tranquilizer. Shawn Michaels had to come out and help him out. He was about to die. He was all over the place. And that was around the time they tell that story, and he was in a fucking bathtub or something. They tell that story because Shawn was starting to get worried that Jannetty was a liability, essentially. And they got in a fight, and Shawn, we hear, not in real time, obviously. He's in WWE now. He would never be on this. He would never be on Dark Side of the Ring. But we hear comments from Shawn from back in probably the late 90s, early 2000s on a shoot interview where he said that they were friends for a long time and they never really fought except for maybe one time. This might have been that one time where they fought, and it was pretty bad. They beat the shit out of each other. Shawn Michaels threw Jannetty out of a window. Not threw, he threw a window, but we're not talking barbershop window, which would come soon after. Ironically enough. But Shawn threw Marty through a window. Thankfully, of a one-story building, so Marty was fine. Would he have done that otherwise? If they were in a 2, 3, 4-story building, I don't know. But Marty came back through the window, took Shawn to the hallway, and just beat the shit out of him. So it was pretty evident at that point the team was on, borrowed time. They were nearing the end of their tag team run. Vince, I think, was already thinking about breaking the two up, and he had said to the two, hey, we're probably going to branch you two off and split up the team and branch you two off in a singles competition. And Marty said, yeah, let me just give us a little while to think about it and talk it over. Shawn didn't even hesitate, Marty says. He just said, yeah, sounds good. We'll do it. And I think Shawn was just ready to move on at that point. So Vince even had said that he had seen Shawn as the star, which he was. And he didn't really see that same single stardom in Marty at that point. He liked Marty. He thought he was very talented, which he was. He just didn't see him as the same breakout single star at that point in time. And we hear from Beefcake, among other people, Tanaka, and they say, oh, it was all a matter of just Shawn kissing up to Vince, which I'm sure was a factor. But I mean, even looking back now, 30 years later, Shawn was clearly the breakout star of the two. He was always going to go on to main event superstardom. Marty could have gone on to more, but again, he got in his own way. And he ended up winning the Intercontinental Championship. I mean, it wasn't like he had no career after Shawn Michaels. He did. Just, he fucked up time and time again, and it was his own fault. So anyway, they ended up teasing tension on TV, culminating in the famous barbershop segment from January of 1993, 30 years ago this year, where Shawn put Marty through a fake window this time in the barbershop. And Marty says that he kicked me so hard I didn't even feel the glass. And we hear from all the talking heads, and Sano said that he probably would have had the same ascent, that Jannetty would have had the same ascent as Shawn if he didn't have all these problems that were most of his own doing. So their friendship dissipated, and Marty was bitter toward Shawn for that, and Shawn was probably, Sano speculates, trying to distance himself from Jannetty because he was such a liability and he was just a fucking wild man. Case in point, soon after they were going to have a feud, he got arrested for having cocaine. He was on 6 months house arrest, and he ended up getting fired and hired a bunch of times after this. They show a video, and they tell this story. I've forgotten what country this was. He took a guy's motorcycle and drove it through a hotel lobby, knocking someone into the water fountain in the middle of this hotel lobby, just a full-on motorcycle, and he went full speed like it was crazy. He ended up getting kicked out of the country as a result, and Sano says that that's happened in many circumstances where he's done dumb shit and gotten kicked out of countries as a result, and probably can't go back. He got so bitter that he would throw darts at pictures of Shawn Michaels because he saw the success that Shawn went on to have. But again, even Marty, he got brought back at a certain point to do the New Rockers thing. Sano even says that, he wasn't invested in it, and understandably so. He ended up leaving soon after. He got fired by WWE for, again, his own issues. Went to WCW. Sano even said that he was probably on the right track to superstardom there in the mid-90s. But again, he got, again, in trouble with the law, and his contract ran out, and they didn't pick it up. So he was bitter towards Shawn. He went on to do the indie stuff, floundered there. It came to a point in probably 04, early 05, where he was considering suicide by just doing a whole bunch of cocaine and doing it until his heart gave out. And at that point, he said to himself, listen, God, if you want me to not kill myself, essentially, you need to give me a sign. And he was like, oh, it needs to be an obvious sign because I'm an idiot, or something like that, which I thought was funny. So he ended up getting a call, maybe not right then and there, but around that time frame. So he ended up, I guess he got that sign. And it was a call from none other than Shawn Michaels, who we had not spoken to in a very, very long time. And Shawn was a born-again Christian by that point. He said, hey, you want to come on out? I don't know if he was getting baptized or he wanted Marty to get baptized or both. I don't remember, but he brought him to a church. And Marty said for a 3-week period, he lived the most pure life he had ever had in his entire life up to that point, and probably even now. He was living large at that point. He got brought back to WWE in early 05 for the Rockers reunion. It was a success. He didn't think the fans would remember him, and they did. They popped. It was a great match against La Resistance on Raw right before WrestleMania 25 or WrestleMania 21 in 2005. Even had a singles match on SmackDown that week, I think, against Kurt Angle. And as a result, he looked so good in the match, he ended up getting offered a contract. But, of course, it got rescinded because he got jailed a week later. I think he probably signed the contract. Like, he was technically hired by the company, but had to be fired because he got imprisoned a week later because he was hanging out with a stripper who did drugs. Like, this was just a recurring issue, and, again, still is, I don't know, for Marty Jannetty. So, in recent years, being on house arrest, Facebook has become his new getaway, where he would connect with the audience and his fans and what remaining fans he has and just wrestling fans and stuff like that through Facebook. And he would just say like the dumbest, wildest shit. We've all heard it many, many times over the years. Just all these stories popping up of shit that he's admitted to and stuff that he's posted. He posted some wild account of almost sleeping with a woman that he thought looked like his daughter, but he wasn't sure And they show the pictures of all the posts here, not every single one, but a lot of the infamous ones here on the episode, including the daughter one, where like he wasn't sure if it was his daughter or not, and she was going to sleep with him. He was going to sleep with her, rather. And he wanted to find out if they were actually related, but he was going to do it anyway. Like, it was completely fucked up and stupid Marty Jannetty at his most Marty Jannetty. And he, as far as that one goes, he says here that his account was hacked. I don't know about the other ones, probably not, but he said his account was hacked for that one. And including one of the stories we put on there, I remember when this came out a couple of years ago, he admitted to a murder. He admitted to killing someone. And the police investigated, and they ended up closing the case because there wasn't enough evidence to imprison him. Because there wasn't like they did a search of anyone from that area that went missing or whatever, and they couldn't find anything. So to kind of convince them that it didn't happen, or so that he wouldn't go to prison, because he's a fucking idiot, he told them that it was a wrestling storyline designed to get him back into the business. But he maintains in this episode, without actually saying it, because legally he can't. Hypothetically, he says it did. Everyone else that they talked to says that it did happen because he had told them the same story, including Al Snow in the 90s, he said. He told Snow about that same story in the 90s, that it actually happened. And nothing ever really came of it because, again, he admitted to this murder on Facebook. And it was back when he was 14. Basically, the story is this. He bought weed off of someone working at a bowling alley, and he returns to the scene of the crime in this episode. It was a bowling alley that he worked at when he was 14. Went outside, bought some weed off of someone who, kind of gave a pass or took a pass at him or whatever, and he claims he was sexually harassed. He gets out of there. The guy attempts to kind of beat him up or have his way with him or whatever, and he said, "I'm not about that." And the guy is like attacking him or attempting to attack him or whatever, and he hit the guy with a rock in the side of the head. So he ended up putting like the body in a river, he said, or something like that, and no body was found, and therefore the case was closed. But yeah, just crazy shit. Just crazy shit. He ended up saying at the end of the episode that he burned the body. He told other people that. And that he ended up burying the bones. Just crazy stuff, like I said. So Al Snow ended up, dismissing the idea that, oh, you're the Marty Jannetty of the team. That whole kind of notion, like, oh, that person's the Marty Jannetty of the team. And he said anyone would be lucky to be the Marty Jannetty of their tag team because he was so talented. At the same time, though, people use that term not really. I mean, it is a slight to Marty, obviously, because it's not really a positive, nickname to be given. But it wasn't really an indictment on his talent. It was the fact that Shawn went on to superstardom as a main event breakout superstar in WWE, and Marty did not, largely because of his own issues. When people get called the Marty Jannetty today, it's not really because of their own issues. It could be, but a lot of the time it's like, for example, like random example here, but like Heavy Machinery. Otis went on to stay in WWE, have success, and Tucker did not. He was the Marty Jannetty of that tag team. Now, did Tucker do anything wrong? No, but he was the Marty Jannetty of that tag team because he floundered out, he fizzled out, and ended up getting cut through no fault of his own. Again, he's not Marty Jannetty in that sense, but I could see what he's saying though. And Jannetty, when asked about Shawn Michaels, his thoughts on Shawn Michaels today, he says he loves him to death. And he's been great to him ever since that phone call in 2005. He didn't mention if he talks to him today. I doubt it. I doubt he has regular communication with Shawn Michaels. I doubt he probably hasn't talked to him in years because Jannetty's a fucking nutcase, obviously. But he does say he has no ill will towards, no negative feelings towards Shawn Michaels today. And that was about it. That was the episode in a nutshell. And that's really only the stuff that they discussed on the surface. There was a lot more they discussed during the episode I didn't mention. Those were really just the nuts and bolts of it. But a really good episode, a crazy, sad story for Marty Jannetty, a cautionary tale, as I mentioned. But a great episode nonetheless. A cautionary tale, as I mentioned earlier, a crazy, sad story for Marty Jannetty. Just a lot of wild stuff I either did not know, either did know, or completely forgot about and then was reminded when they brought it up here in the episode. The episode was certainly what I was hoping for. It was better than I was expecting, and it was as crazy, if not crazier, than I thought it would be. So certainly check it out right now on Vice. That is the Season 4 finale of Dark Side of the Ring, The World According to Marty Jannetty. Thank you guys for checking out my Dark Side of the Ring reviews. I appreciate it. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. All my Dark Side of the Ring reviews from Season 4 and Seasons 1 through 3 available here on the channel right now in the description box down below. Playlist featuring all those Dark Side of the Ring reviews from over the years. Some great episodes in there, so check those out when you get a chance. And that's it. We'll see if they get green light for Season 5. I'm not sure if they will. I was skeptical they'd even make a season 4 because it's been 2 years since the last season. But this ended up being a good one. There were 10 episodes. Some were stronger than others. I enjoyed these episodes, and nonetheless, I learned a lot from them, if nothing else. So another good season here in the books, A Dark Side of the Ring. And again, thank you guys for all the support over the course of this episode, season, everything. I very much appreciate it. Have a great one, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.